Hello, welcome back to the You, Me, We Therapy, the podcast. I'm your host, Jackie. This is my second season, so thank you for coming back. I left the last season talking about dating apps, and it's something I'm going to expand a bit more on as I go into other topics as well. The reason I think it's important to explore emotions and share them and thoughts, ideas around them, because it can broaden out into so many other topics. I'm a counsellor, so I deal with emotions on a regular basis, professionally, and obviously I'm a human, so I deal with them on a regular basis as anyone else does. Just because somebody works in a profession of mental health or mental well-being, a counsellor, a coach, a therapist, it doesn't mean that they've got it all down packed. A doctor still gets a cold, a fireman might still have a fire person may still have a fire in their home, a plumber may still have a leaky tap. These are just things that we are professionally trained to work with, yet they affect us all. So I think it's good to bring ideas from my perspective, because it can dispel any myths or ideas people may have about therapy or seeking therapy, to dispel any kind of worries and things that somebody may think that a therapist may not know what someone's going through because they haven't been through it themselves, for example. We're going to talk about dating again today. I left off the last season talking about dating because it has an impact on one's emotional well-being, happiness, stress, anxiety, joy. It can bring about a range of different emotions. I hope you enjoy today's topic and follow for more. If you find you are distressed or triggered or upset by anything in this podcast and you feel unable to keep yourself safe, please take yourself to the nearest hospital and let them know that you are struggling with your mental health. And this is so you can keep yourself safe, because I want everybody to be as safe as they can. Okay, check this out. I knew I weren't going crazy. I knew it. That's a phrase I want you to be able to say at the end of listening to this episode. So let's see if I can help you get there. Today, I want to talk about ghost lighting. Yeah, ghost lighting, yo. Have you heard of it? You have heard of it, but let me explain to you what it is. It's gaslighting and ghosting mixed in together for a double whammy. I was scrolling through my phone and an article popped up from, I think, Glamour magazine. They talk about ghostlighting, and I thought, yes, this is a real thing. And those listening today, you may have experienced it in your own world. It's typical for dating, but it can come up in many different environments. And the point of it is, it's a tactic that is, well, it's quite calculating. I've used the word tactic. Tactic gives the impression that it's manipulative, contrived, with a level of awareness about it. But I want to come to this from an angle of, there could be a level of awareness, there can be a level of unawareness, but there is definitely a level of awareness. Let's not like gaslight our own selves and pretend like people don't know that they're doing this. But what might not be prevalent is the damage it causes. That might not have as much awareness about it. And as this is a podcast about emotions, I think it's quite useful to discuss the emotional fallout that comes from something like ghostlighting. So ghosting is when someone behaves like a ghost. They're there 1 minute and gone the next, and they use that in their pattern of communication. Maybe there's texting taking place between person A, person B, phone calls taking place between person A, person B, and then one person, let's say person B, just stops engaging. And how long they stop engaging for really depends on the situation. It might be days, weeks, months. It could be a shorter space of time. But I mean, there has to be a level of time involved where you could actually quantify it as something like ghosting. I would personally say, if somebody's gone a couple of hours, a minute, and they've not responded to your message, I don't think that would count as ghosting. But if a significant amount of time has gone by, a day, I'd say, maybe 2, because in that day or 2, 3, 4, 5, however, I'd say a day and more has gone up. What happens is the energy has changed between the 2 people. You know, what had charge in it and enthusiasm and spark, it only takes about 24 hours or, 48 hours for that energy connection to shift and change, because doubt can start to set in for person A, for example. If they're still waiting for a response from person B, they're left hanging. So the energy exchange shifts, it brings about a different thing. So when there's that disconnect, by the time person B's got back in touch with person A's been doing all kinds of things, wondering why it's taken so long. Did they do something? Self-doubt has set in for person A, and person B is not meeting them back at the point of where they've left off, this left unfinished business. So if that accumulates multiple times over a course of a relationship, a friendship, weeks, months, years even, somebody has a pattern of communicating that way, where they leave someone hanging, and they don't match back with where they left off. It leaves the person that's hanging spinning around in a lot of doubt. So ghosting, that's how ghosting is. Somebody's engaging with somebody, and then that communication stops like a ghost. Somebody disappears like a ghost. Gaslighting is when somebody is, say, person A, person B again. Person B has not acknowledged the reality of person A. Person A could be saying, this is my experience of you, or a thing, or a situation. They are telling person B. Person B then says, either downplays it, says it's not true, don't know what you're talking about, you're being too, they could say, wow, thanks for sharing that with me. I can see how that's really affected you. Do you want to talk about it? They could open up the conversation, but instead they don't. They close down the conversation. They say something like, that can't be true. Don't know what you're talking about. You must be too sensitive. They do something where the conversation's shut down, or the blame's directed back at person A. So it's denying the reality of person A. Person A is coming with something to person B. Person B is rejecting it, saying, no, not the case. So that is gaslighting. Mix the 2 together. It could be something like person A, person B in a level of communication. Person B ghosts and stops the communication. When they get back in touch with person A says, hey, where have you been? We've not been in communication. You've just ceased the communication. And then person B either gaslights, like in a way says, no, not the case. Don't know what you're talking about. You're the reason why I've had to do that. You done this, so I had to do that, So there's a real breakdown in communication. But person B is really, sorry to say if anyone identifies with this as person B, but person B is using a level of manipulation in a way, because they're disengaging and not sharing their true thoughts or feelings as to why they disengaged. For whatever reason, it could be that it's hard for them to really identify what they're feeling. It could be that they don't have the balls to say what it is they're feeling to person A. It could be many reasons. It could be a habit that they've fallen into, and they don't really regard person A's feelings as anything more important than their own. Their own feelings are more valid, so they're going to just stick to do what they need to do, and not regard person A's feelings in it. So that's a bit I'm going to explore a bit later in this episode, if you stick with me. I just wanted to lay out the foundation of what ghostlighting is. So do you follow? Do you get that? Have you ever had that kind of experience where you could be engaging in something, another person stops, and when you get back in touch with them, you're like, hey, what happened to you? And they're like, nothing, I don't know what you mean. Or they're like, well, it's your fault. Why? And you're like, well, I've been waiting around for days, weeks. You could have said something about why it was my fault. So let's go to person A. What's happening for them is going to be doubt. They're naturally, I think, going to doubt themselves. And when it comes to doubt, it's a really, you need to be very sensitive, because people could have a background of either having issues with low self-esteem, childhood issues of trauma, history. People can have a history with self-doubt, whereby these tactics could have come about in earlier stages in their life. Parents can gaslight children, and children can gaslight children, teachers can gaslight children. Like, there's many, if you think back to your childhood, there could be many times where you knew something to be true, and the person who had the authority over you denied it, said, no, that's not the case. So you're left thinking, oh, maybe it isn't the case then. I guess maybe am I a bit stupid, or, you know, so it's sad to say, but this is how self-doubt can kind of slip in. And validation is such an important thing. I know it's like we're almost in this kind of thing where we're told to be empowered and be self-confident and almost validate yourself, which is a really good thing, to validate yourself. However, isn't it good to get a bit of validation from another person? It does feel good, doesn't it? So you could think like, yeah, I thought that was the case, but now I've had proof, another person said that's the case too. It feels like a bit of proof. So yeah, it's backed up. It's backed me up a bit. It feels like having an ally in another person who's seen something from my perspective. So yeah, for person A who's on the receiving end of gaslighting, the seeds of doubt can really cause quite a lot of things. I'd say they can cause issues with anxiety, for one, because they could worry that something's actually happened to person B. They could have had an experience where they hadn't had contact with somebody and something unfortunate happened to that person, and then what this has done is triggered a trauma, reminder of something traumatic that's happened, where they lost contact with somebody and actually they were no longer able to get contact with that person. Perhaps something happened, something unfortunate happened. And for person A, it can also bring about anger, because they could feel disrespected. They could feel like they're not being heard, their points not being appreciated. They, as a person, are not being valued or appreciated, that somebody could just stop engaging with them. It's like it gives the impression of someone being hot and cold. Engage, 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 stop. You're left hanging. So it feels very disrespectful for person A to be on the receiving end of something like that. And when there's disrespect, there's obviously the obvious thing for person A to feel would be anger. And behind anger, as I've mentioned in other episodes, is things like sadness and fear. And the fear could be that I've feared that I've put myself in a position where somebody has been disrespectful to me, and they can start blaming themselves, you see? So it really can go into a really messy cycle of what's going on in someone's mind in regards to being on the other end of gaslighting. So let's go to person B. Let's say person B, perhaps something happened in the engagement between person A and B, and person B was triggered. Something triggered them, and perhaps there's a pattern of being avoidant, detaching, putting their needs first for whatever reason, and not thinking that actually they're causing too much damage. They perhaps could think they could cause more damage if they continue to engage in person A, because they don't trust themselves with what they might say. Something's obviously maybe cheesed them off maybe, or upset them, and they don't want to be able to, they don't want to ruin the relationship, so they just stop altogether, drop it. It's too hot. I might do something that could destroy this permanently. I'm just going to step back altogether. And then when I've regulated myself, I'll come back and start again. So person B, perhaps, let's say, they've had to do some emotional regulation, and it takes time for them to do that. See, I'm going to lead into a bit about parental coaching, because I've mentioned before I'm a parental coach. One of the things that is a key part of parental coaching is helping parents to understand the value in teaching a child to emotionally regulate their emotions. Typically, it might happen, people would assume that emotional regulation comes from socializing. So a child goes to nursery or kindergarten, then they go to school and they learn other children, through mixing with other children, how to emotionally regulate. How many times have you noticed a parent really engaging with that as a topic, emotional regulation? You might help a child potty train, you help a child how to feed themselves, how to say please and thank you. But how much effort actually goes into intentionally helping a child to regulate their emotions? People notice things like temper tantrums because they're so overt and in your face, and that's what they tend to focus on. But what about, for example, say a child wants to interrupt you. You're talking and your child comes up and wants to interrupt. That child has excitement. They want to tell you something. Perhaps they're feeling left out. That's an emotion. Excitement's an emotion. So rather than just letting them interrupt or telling them off for interrupting, that's an emotion that they need to find a way to handle and regulate. So you can help a child regulate something as subtle as that kind of interaction, interrupting. What you could, there's different techniques. If you follow my work in the future, I'm going to really delve in a lot deeper into the techniques of this. But what I just want to bring attention to is that emotional regulation is suitable to teach a child for every single emotion. And it could be, let's go back to the example of a child interrupting a parent. That child's excited, they want to get involved, they don't want to be left out, they want to share what they need to share. That's emotions building up, excitement. So to help that child know that they're not being overlooked, you do want to hear what they have to say. However, mum, dad, grandma, aunt, uncle, cousin, big brother, big sister, whoever it is, teacher, right now, they're actually talking to another person. And that they would like to hear what this excited child has to say fully, because it sounds like they've really got something great they want to share with you. I really want to hear what you have to say. But I am in the middle of something. So if you can just wait whilst I finish here, then I want to be able to give you all my attention, because it sounds so fantastic what you want to share. So whilst giving that kind of communication back to a child, that child has to sit and hold all this excitement, oh, they're buzzing. What can they do? They might want to scream, they might want to cry, they might want to get upset, they might want to feel that they don't want to tell you that you don't want to listen. It can really spin off into other directions of just chaos. So you help that child to manage it. Breathe. This is how you can breathe. What can you do in the meantime? How can you communicate this to me? There's tips and tricks and methods which I will go into another time, but I just want to, like I said, bring the point to helping a child emotionally regulate. The reason being is it's a skill set that can be used later in life, and it helps in adult life. It's a muscle you need to exercise. So when you emotionally regulate yourself, you can engage in relationships with a little bit more success. So let's go back to person B. They perhaps have disengaged. Perhaps they need to do some emotional regulation, and the only way they can do it is to just drop the hot potato altogether, go off, roll through their head, whatever it is they need to roll through their head, calm their nerves, sort out what it is they want to say, and then re-engage. But what's happened in that time is 2-3 days could have gone by, or more, a week could have gone by. They've had to completely disconnect from a whole other human being before they can re-engage. I'd say there may be some sort of level, perhaps I'm not diagnosing anybody, this is purely my opinion, it's not a diagnosis, so don't get your knickers in a twist. But this is just my opinion. There could be a level of dysregulation in their ability to regulate their emotions. Say hormones there. Regulate their emotions. Just like hormones. Hormones need regulation. They need to be balanced. So do emotions. They need to be balanced. And if somebody doesn't have the ability to do it in a swift kind of a way, that is commonly acceptable, a day or two, an hour or two. How long does it take somebody to calm down from feeling really angry? Typically, it shouldn't take too long, but you could tell if somebody needs a very long time to calm down from being angry, something's up, right? So perhaps person B is disengaged because they need to go off and regulate their emotions. That's one idea. Another idea is that they have a pattern of detaching, attaching and detaching, attaching and detaching. Again, I'd say it has links to being able to regulate emotions, but it can come across as being controlling and manipulative. I'm not saying that that's person's B's intention, because let's say that it is. If it is, then that's a different issue. I'm being sympathetic to person B here, if that's making any sense here, because if it is being controlling and manipulative, I don't think that takes too much discussion here. It's wrong. There's wrong, there's right, that's wrong. Done. End of the podcast. I'm trying to lean into the possibilities of what could be going on, and then from an unaware place, if they are not aware of the consequences of their actions, that actually maybe they're disengaging because engaging causes trouble for them, and they need to take a deeper look as to what that is, because the fallout for person A is quite messy, and I'm sure for person A, actually, they just want the truth, to be honest. They may be somebody that might be a little bit more open to direct talk, blunt talk, truth. And what's stopping person B from being honest? Because ultimately, this is the crunch. It's time wasting. It wastes people's time. Person A may feel that their time is being wasted, and that's a really hard thing to sit with. So, yes, how does that make any sense to you? Let's go back to that phrase. I knew I weren't going crazy. I knew I weren't going mad. Right, it's a thing, gaslighting. It does happen. So I want to bring a bit of light to it to kind of, if it could happen less, I think it'd be better, but it does happen. So if it happens to you, just something to be aware of what's actually going down, from my opinion. Alrighty, have a good one.